Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. A really interesting one, in fact. This is the Paragon Warlock. So, you can see there it says Asheville Steel and Paragon on the front. This knife is one that I've been aware of for a long time. I think I was first made aware of it by Lugermonger years ago, and it, truthfully, was never really something that interested me. It was actually provided for our pass-around group by Mr. Kyle_J_Landfair. Please give him a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. And while you're there, go ahead and follow me. But yeah, and I saw it on the list and I thought, yeah, that's a good opportunity to check that out. What I do on this channel is I review knives that are either of great interest to me or are super popular in the knife community. You know, basically just models that I can't ignore. Just the intrigue surrounding the model just because it's popular, or maybe it's popular for one reason or another. This thing I feel like is popular because it's odd. You can see there actually, when I actuated it, I'll show you guys that real quick. This is two pieces of aluminum, and as these buttons press in, literally have not learned yet, still, as you press them in, the two sides of the aluminum essentially flare outward like this, and allows the blade to swing freely. It took a little bit. And I've seen some other videos and they say, you know, don't pinch it like this, and you do that, and then it only opens at the top and you just wiggle around like that. Yeah, the idea here is to keep the rest of your hand off the back of the knife, push the two buttons up top, and then allow the blade to swing freely. So, to me, it's getting it back out that is a little bit, sometimes, you know, there's a lot of wrist movement and wrist flare. You know, there's a lot of that stuff. Now, some people are going to be better at it than me. I've played with this for about a week and a half now, and I think I've got it down to the point where I guess the transition between the pocket and, you know, into my hand, then deployment, and then retraction of the blade and put it back in my pocket. I've got that down, you know, as simple as I can. So I'm at the point where I want to give my thoughts on it. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy before we talk a little bit more about it. Overall length of the Paragon Warlock is coming in at, boy, it's big. It's a big knife. Coming in at about 9, it's like 9 and it's a little over 9¼ inches. Blade length is 4 inches. Cutting edge is about 3.8, something like that. Let's go ahead and get some size comparisons here. So up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall, and you can see there, not small, and not small at all. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7¼ inches overall. So how's the action? Truthfully, you know, once you push those buttons there, it does swing freely. There's friction. I mean, this isn't, here's the thing, guys. This isn't a new design, and it appears to have been designed the same way for, when did these come out? I'm under the impression they came out 4 to 5 years ago. It seems like the build quality is roughly the same. It's two pieces of aluminum. I'm not going to get into the internals. There are other videos out there that show that, right? But it's largely the same as it was. Now, in today's world, in today's knife world, we really kind of fetishize that ultra smooth, bearing smooth action. You know, the solid lockup, right? All those little teeny tiny things. Truthfully, you know, in terms of utility, you know, a pocket knife needs to be able to come out of your pocket. It needs to deploy, right, readily. It needs to lock up solid. You need to be able to use it efficiently, right, with all the ergonomic lines fitting in there, and then you need to be able to retract and put it back in. It does do that, and it does it, you know, in a way that it's not so impressive in terms of all those little teeny tiny things that don't necessarily matter, but that do matter if you're going to spend a whole bunch of money on your knife and you have, you know, this foundation of quality was created by the impressions that you have received from the modern knife world, right? So, what am I saying? The action's a bit clunky, and it's also a bit awkward. This is certainly a knife that you'll have to adapt to, especially considering it is I mean, they have a patent on this. This is a unique design, right? It is very fidgety. Fidget factor, once you get this down, is off the charts. I mean, it's actually pretty fun to play with. It's very noisy, very crazy, right? But in terms of like you know, if you're somebody who's spent, you know, between $200 and $300 on a modern titanium frame lock, and you're used to that, you know, really luxurious action, it's not the same thing. There's definitely, you know, this is just a different knife. It wasn't necessarily designed to be this ultra, you know, luxury smooth thing, right? It also, you know, the design is one where these pieces, you know, they kind of move around a little bit. Now, this isn't a brand new one. This one has been used. It's been well loved, so I'm not going to judge it too hard. I don't know if on a brand new one, these pieces, see what I mean? They move around a little bit. But the design, you know, is one where when you're going to use it, right, naturally, you're going to go to squeeze it. You squeeze it and everything holds together, right? Just letting everything kind of swing freely and just feeling this. The blade is pretty solid in there. It moves around a little bit. It's kind of, you know, this is a knife where my brain tells me this is an OTF, and then I realize it's not an OTF, right? It's just my subconscious feeling is, it's because of the shape of the handle and the symmetry and these two buttons right here, my brain, of course, especially in the closed position, my brain's like, oh, it's an OTF, right? And with that comes this subconscious expectation the blade's going to move just a little bit. And it does if you let everything kind of, you know, but if you grip it, you squeeze it hard, like you would if you're going to use it, the blade doesn't really move around that much. So there's some stuff in there that moves around, but it's part of the design. So I'm not, it's really hard to say whether or not I consider that a flaw. It doesn't seem like anything has come out of place or has come out of whack completely after this, you know, thing has been used. Actually, yeah, it just has the patent number on there. I was hoping maybe we might see a date there, but that's just, you know, my knife snob, my inner knife snob coming out after handling all of these really, really like ultra intricate, ultra luxurious knives. The action is very fun. I wouldn't call it, you know, something that's hyper, you know, it has this massive air of quality about it. It's fun to fidget with, and it's, you know, the design essentially yields that intentionally, I would assume. Okay, we've added enough dialogue to that. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Can't do a hardware check on this guy because it's not, you know, there's essentially the screws, you know, for on the outside, the exposed screws are the two screws with the pocket clip. That's literally it. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Holy crap, this thing is really thick, really thick. Two pieces of aluminum, a steel blade, and then we have probably some steel internals. That would make sense. In fact, I'll let you guys see in there. Yeah, you can see there's looks like the stop pin and some other steel internals on the inside. That makes sense. So in terms of length, it is definitely longer than the PM2 and Para 3. Absolutely. It's definitely thicker. Maximum height, yeah, actually, it's actually a little bit taller than the PM2 at maximum height. It doesn't look like from this way, but it definitely is. So this, truthfully, is going to be a fairly cumbersome object, even for people like me who regularly carry full-size knives. Let me get you guys a blade stock measurement of this Warlock, or I'm sorry, Sorcerer Ground dagger blade is what they call it. Let's see, where's the best place to pinch it? Right there, probably. Not crazy thick, 125 thousandths, which is good considering it's a dagger ground blade. So there's not a lot of room on either side of this blade to drop down towards the cutting edge. Oops. Gosh, that's another. We're gonna talk about a few things here in a sec. Okay, 6.28 ounces. Truthfully, it's right at the tippy top of my preferred carry weight. As I always say, dimensions and profile, all that stuff matters. In this case, this is thick. It is big, right? And it's heavy. Now, in and out of the pocket, I mean, truthfully, this thing doesn't have, you know, a lot of little things hanging off of it in any direction that are going to clip and snag on things. So if you're wearing jeans or work pants on a day-to-day basis, this probably isn't going to bother you. if you're wearing skinny jeans, leather pants, athletic shorts, right? I joke about the leather pants thing, but seriously, you know, like sweatpants and athletic shorts, things like that, you're probably not going to like this very much. And probably not going to like it at all. Okay, what do we need to move on to? Have we finished all that? Okay, so here's the thing, guys. This is considered in most most states that have laws around stuff like this. This is considered a gravity knife. It's also 4 inches, and it is it's a dagger ground blade, and it's actually sharp on both sides. This is simply not going to be legal everywhere, right? I live in Kansas, so I can carry this. It's not a big deal. Sorry, there's stuff all over the table here. But, you know, I'm constantly having to ask myself, is this practical? Now, I know a lot of people want to point out, you know, I'm sure there are self-defense benefits to a knife like this. I don't really do that on this channel. Not really a self-defense person. I look at every knife that comes across my table as an EDC tool, and whether or not it's practical in the EDC sense, it's just what I do. You know, I figure I'll get criticism for that here or there, but that's fine. So, you know, seriously though, in and out of the pocket, I mean, I'm actually in sweatpants right now. I can get this thing in and out of the pocket pretty easily, right? And then transitioning to this point right here and pushing the button is fine. We're going to talk about the anatomy and everything like that. I'm going to tell you guys right now, my biggest issue is, number one, the awkward actuation of that switch and getting used to it, right? My hand doesn't always naturally know that there is just a little bit of wrist flick involved unless you turn it like this, and then sometimes you can get it to just perfectly swing out. And I'm sure the more that I handled it, the more that I played with it, if this was mine and I owned it, I'm sure I would adapt to it. But I am 100% convinced that it is simply never going to be as convenient as a simple, you know, for example, like the Para 3 and the thumb hole and the compression lock. It is just an easier transition, you know, from pocket to hand to deployment to retraction. I mean, it's just an easier transition, right? Not every single person on the planet is the same. Not every single person is going to agree with me, but this is a completely different mechanism, a completely different lock. So it's going to take longer to get used to it. And even when you are used to it, it's just, I'm convinced that it just will never quite be as convenient as the simple thumb stud deployer, the simple flipper, the simple thumb hole opener, anything like that. On top of that, couple of times, now obviously if this is in your pocket, I'm right-handed, so if this is in my pocket, it's going to be here, so I'm always going to know to put my thumb on this side, deploy it this way. Every now and then I set this thing down, I walk away, and I come back to it, right, and I do this. And I go, oh, it's the other side. It's a problem with any symmetrical design. I've talked about that with, you know, like the Maximus dagger from Hinderer and a number of other knives that are similar. With an OTF, it's not a problem because you find the switch, you just push the switch forward and it goes forward. But a symmetrical design, a side opener, you know, if there's not on this, I mean, I understand, like, well, the pocket clip's on one side and you've got the logo on the other, but the two sides are so close, so I'm just picking it up. Sometimes that happens, right? So that's also a problem. On top of that, you know, you really have to be positioned. It's the same thing with any knife, you know, handle with care. But with this thing, which I think is notoriously the knife that you don't hand to people, right? That's kind of a running gag, is don't hand somebody a Paragon Warlock, because it's about as, I mean, people always tell me, you know, because I did that video, like, knives you shouldn't hand to people. And there were so many people who were like, well, the simplest solution is just to explain it to them beforehand and then hand it to them. Okay, listen, guys, I have handed so many knives to so many people. And those of you who collect knives and have friends in your social circles, right, who you do that with, you probably have too. You guys will be able to back me up on this. There are definitely people out there, no matter how many times you explain something to them in terms of a knife, they'll get it in their hand and they just, all the instructions go out the window, right? And it scares them because they're not expecting the spring tension, or they don't understand the detent. They put their hands in the wrong position. There's too many things for them to consider, right? Their hands are not, essentially the muscle memory has not been developed yet, right? On top of that, most people who are not knife people are not used to actually really sharp blades. They're used to their, they're used to the Buck 110 in their junk drawer that's been dulled to crap over the years, right? So they go to touch the blade, or they're basically not respecting the thing that's about to fly out of the handle, right? And it cuts them. it doesn't matter how many times you explain it to people. You know, I could never figure out why people thought that that was an automatic contradiction to that video. No. No matter how many times you explain it to people, there are some knives that are just, you know, not knives that you hand to new non-knife people, right? Not without a much longer demonstration, right? Sometimes there are just knives, right? Designs like this where it's likely, even as a knife person, that it's probably going to bite you a few times, no matter how careful you are, no matter how practiced you are, and that's how you learn, right? So that's essentially what I'm getting at here, is that the Paragon Warlock has so many of those little elements, right? So the actuation switch, right? The way that it comes out, the size of the blade, the fact that it's dagger ground, right? There's so many things here. This is truly not a knife that you hand to a brand new knife person. A brand new knife person, I'd start them off with something super duper simple, you know, a really simple manual side opening blade that, you know, didn't have anything crazy associated with, maybe simple liner lock, something like that. But anyways, yeah, it's something that you're constantly going to have to be aware of. You know, I couldn't imagine this starting to feel organic until after probably a couple of months of carrying it around. And even then, it's still going to be this gigantic hunk of metal in my pocket. Very thick aluminum. Now, that being said, I gotta say, 16 minutes of kind of, you're like, okay, we get it, you don't really like it. Let me say some positive things about this. I do like symmetry a lot, and I would be lying if I said that this knife was not aesthetically attractive. I like the symmetry here. Now, there are newer versions of this with the sword and shield on it. Now, this one, you know, I don't know if they all have the sword that runs up the middle of the blade. I think that's cool. I also like the almost shard of obsidian looking blade on this guy. You know, we've got, it's a dagger ground blade, but then they've kind of, it looks like, I don't know if they've like used what they used to like Dremel this out or whatever, and then it's kind of got this concrete finish and everything else is satin. Kind of looks neat. It's not even. I don't know if they do that by hand on every single one. It almost looks like that because it's uneven on both sides. So if they do that by hand, then that's kind of neat. It's kind of impressive. It almost looks like it's not perfectly symmetrical on purpose to give it that kind of, you know, thing that was forged at the you know, peak of a wizard's tower. They kind of have this fantasy tactile. I'm not really sure if this is fantasy or if it's like the mega military tactics. Kind of both of those things mixed together on the aesthetic and the feel of it, but that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. The edges and everything are nicely chamfered down. The lines here look good. I mean, this is obviously made with care. I don't like that these pieces move freely. I like everything to be solid on my knives. You know, even on like an OTF, there are some parts that just kind of have to move around, you know? So, like on this guy, the button, the Microtech SOCOM, or I'm sorry, the Combat Trudon, button's got a little bit of play. That bothers me a little bit. Blade moves around just a teeny tiny little bit. That's okay. Everything else is completely solid, and I kind of give that a pass. Now that's a much more expensive knife, so maybe that's not as fair, but let's pretend it's a Microtech Ultratech, right? A much less expensive knife, much closer to this guy. Same exact thing. The button's going to move around a little bit, and the blade's going to move around a little bit. On this guy, it's like the handle moves around a little bit, and the blade moves around a little bit, and it's not until I'm actually gripping it that it wants to stay solid. That's something that bothers me. That's not something that's, I mean, obviously this thing is still working, so it's not necessarily an indication that it's going to fall apart. It's just part of the design, and you know, it's just the part of that design that I don't like. You know, it's me as this you know, kind of crazy snobby knife person, right? But yeah, I mean, it is like all the lines meet up and everything. And this is 6061 T6 aluminum, and I like the finish on it. It's not that chalky Type 3 hard coat anodizing, right? It's kind of a smooth, reflective surface here. I do like the logo there. I do also like the button. You can see there, if you are going to actually take it apart, you take the button off first. Now, I don't know exactly how deep into the internals you can get. Like I said, I'm not going to take this apart, but that's actually where you do that. And it looks like those are probably T6, and there's 2 on each side. Forgot to mention that earlier in the portion of the video where I was talking about the hardware check. But yeah, I do like how the lines are all symmetrical. That's nice. The blade itself, I like how it actually comes out of the handle. I can't, looks like a Warlock's dagger. You know, it honestly looks like something, I guess if you were a wizard and you carried a pocket knife, this looks like something you would carry. It sounds weird to say, but I mean, you know, I can understand that. They call this the Sorcerer's Grind. Does a Paragon Warlock have a different blade option? I don't know if they do or not. They do have a lot of different colors. In fact, I'm sure you guys know, I'm going to be linking these down in the description so that, you know, whether or not you care about my words, you know, if you want to check these out, you can. They come in a lot of different colors. They've got different blade finishes, things like that. These are CPM S30V, which is a steel I have no problem with in this price range. CPM S30V is very well rounded. I understand people are like, but, you know, it's boring, and I see it on knives that cost less money. The materials are not always exactly what, you know, dictates the price. It depends on the design, how costly the design is, right? So reducing the knife's overall value to just the materials will get you nowhere. It'll lead you down a path of confusion and misinformation. So don't do that. Obviously, I don't want to see 8CR 13 MOV and FRN on a knife that costs as much as this, right? But what I'm saying is there's a line and it's kind of foggy. I don't have a problem with aluminum and S30V on a design that is obviously more complicated than your average folding knife and obviously costs more money to make, and it's still being made pretty well. Anyways, the blade looks good. We've got these satin grind lines, and everything is ground symmetrically. That's really nice to see. Even down at the tip, the line goes all the way right down the center, which is great. It really makes me mad on a dagger ground blade, especially an expensive one where the blade does not go down the center. Recent Benchmade OTF had that issue, and it really bothered me. I really like that they put that little sword right down the middle. That's just a neat little touch. It's simple. It's nothing really, really complicated. It just looks nice. Like I said, everything locks up pretty solid when you're holding this, right? I mean, if you're going to use this, if you're really going to, you know, bear down on it, then yeah, you're going to be squeezing it. So it's going to be solid. These areas up here, I guess you can call this choking up. You're much safer back here. These little guards, I guess you can call them guards, just ergonomic lines that keep you from sliding up on the blade, I think are really, really important because, you know, if they weren't here, you just, the handle would just guide your hand right up the blade. You don't want that. Let's talk about the pocket clip. I do not like that pocket clip. Gross. The entire knife is symmetrical, and then there's this, it's just, here's the clip, you know. It's fine. I mean, it works. It's just nothing special, and it's just kind of just, it's like they, oh, no, forgot to add a clip. Okay, just drill 2 holes and put it on there. You can flip it over to the other side, which is nice. So, you know, you can carry it if you're left-handed. This is an ambidextrous knife. You can see I'm still having problems with that, despite me being, you know, used to it. Now, I know, like, you know, like diehard Paragon Warlock fans are going to be like, you just don't want to like it, and you're not willing to practice with it. That's not necessarily the case. It's just less organic, you know. It's like I said, no matter how much I practice with it, it's just never going to be exactly as easy as the, sometimes it catches right there in the middle too. And I also feel like I'm damaging it or putting marks on it just while I'm using it. Again, knife snob in me is coming out, right? Worrying about little teeny tiny things that are not necessarily things you need to worry about when you're considering using the tool. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, don't like the clip. This could have been a really cool clip that could have gone perfectly with the design. Now, the truth is I don't know if they've changed this or not. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. I think it's the same clip. It also does not carry deep. You got this big old wizard tower spire sticking out of the top of your pants. It's just weird. Okay, so let's recap because we're getting, you know, we're getting pretty long here. This is an aesthetically pleasing design. And the blade is certainly made out of a premium blade steel. I love, the best part of the knife is the blade, aesthetically. The blade is really cool. It is ground well. It is not sloppy. It is functional. The knife, the rest of the, you know, the rest of the parts of the knife are machined well. There's some play that is a, you know, essentially just part of the design. It's not necessarily a flaw. It's just part of the design. I don't like that. It's just something that bothers me as a snob. The action it has great fidget factor, especially if you can kind of get it down, right? It's very, very loud, and it seems like the overall, the number of processes and the little tiny things you have to get right in terms of timing and momentum and all that, even though I'm finally doing it on camera. There's just a lot of little teeny tiny things that you have to devote your subconscious to while you're learning, right? And while that might get easier, it simply will never be as convenient as a simple, cutting tool that we're used to in today's modern knife world, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a pair of 3. Simple liner lock, simple frame lock, something like that. They're just easier to manipulate. There are less processes involved in getting the blade out. This is more of a, this one puts on more of a show. It's more so for the entertainment of the user, or for the user to display, to whoever it is they're showing. It certainly is a showpiece, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I mean, people are really going to be impressed with something like this, whether they're, kind of afraid of it or think it's really interesting. But the truth is it's just substantially more dangerous to the user and other people because of the design. It's also illegal in a lot of places, right? Which it shouldn't be, but it is. It's also massive and thick, and it's pretty heavy. The end result here at 25 minutes is, this is neat. Truthfully, that's the end result is, this knife is neat. It is fairly well made, and it's fun to play with. Outside of that, though, there are just too many little things that just are so far outside of my preferences that it's just not something that I like. It's not often that I do a review, where the end result is I don't like it. But this is the case today. Now, you don't have to listen to me. If you like this knife, yeah, go ahead. In fact, I will provide links so that you can at least go look at them. You don't have to listen to me. But I do have my own preferences, and there are certain things that I look for in a convenient cutting tool, and I'm just not finding it in the Paragon Warlock. I do appreciate you, Kyle, Mr. Kyle_J_Landfear, for letting all of us take a look at this. Expect to see this on a lot of the other review channels that you guys watch. It certainly is interesting. By the way, I know I haven't talked about price. These come in at $250. Funny enough, I don't like this for a bunch of different reasons outside of quality, right? A couple of weird spots in the knife that have some wiggle and some play, but the knife does appear to be solid and well made, and I do think that it'll stand up to, reasonable, what you would essentially use a folding knife for, and maybe a little bit outside of that. It's probably going to be right around the same realm of what a Microtech OTF is capable of, which is quite a bit. Thanks to X-Ring, we now have proof that those knives can handle quite a bit, and I would imagine this is going to be about the same. US made, S30V, quality machine parts, lots of moving parts. They want $250 at base. Truthfully, despite not really liking the knife, I'm okay with that. I think what they're asking is totally fair, right? So yeah, check it out if you want to. Guys, this was a weird review. I don't know. Did it feel weird to you guys? It was, I'm always honest. I'm always tell you guys the truth, but I just, I had a lot of, it was hard to get my thoughts all collected on this thing. And in any case, I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope it was at least mildly informative or mildly entertaining. If it was, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. If you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great